It's Listen In with KNN, the sports sound of the district. We bring you the biggest guests, great analysis, and the hottest sports stories in the nation's capital and beyond. And we bring it to you live. Welcome to this live stream broadcast of Listen In with KNN. Here's your host, Kelsey Nicole Nelson.
Hello, everyone. Happy Thursday, and welcome to another live stream edition of Listen In with KNN, sports talk radio show and podcast. So glad you guys are back joining me. I am super excited for today's show. I promised you guys I'll bring in somebody who knows the DC area, at least just a little bit. He played some of his playing time career here in DC with our Washington Redskins football team back when he was a player. My next special guest that I'll be welcoming on today played 8 years in the National Football League. He is the dad of 6 little ones, and he made time to join us today. He's a former first-round pick, and without further ado, I'd like to bring in Mr. Adam. Here he is.
Hey, how's it going?
How are you? Adam Carriker is my special guest. I'm so excited to have you because, the Redskins fans love you, Adam.
Oh, I appreciate that. The time in D.C. was awesome. It's a great area, great people, and people who are passionate about their football team. That's what I love the most.
To say the least. I mean, Redskins fans, look, we have Redskins funerals here. We have Redskins weddings here. Anything Redskins themed, it's there. But let's actually just go into that. So I'm going to take you back to your time here in the DC area. What were some of your favorite memories playing for the Washington Redskins football team?
I think some of the things that I remember is I'd never been at a NFL stadium where they had a band before. I thought that was really cool that they had a band. My second year here was actually Robert's first year. We went from 3-6 to 9-7, won the NFC East.
Yeah.
I was also here for a few other interesting things that went on as well. Albert Haynesworth was here a little bit during my time as well. So let's just say it wasn't boring. There was always something to talk about.
Always something to talk about. Yeah, that's pretty much the Washington Redskins team that we still know. And then, I know they're probably still not your team now. Actually, you grew up in New England, right?
So I grew up in the state of Washington, born in Nebraska.
Born in Nebraska.
Yeah, moved when I was little.
Yep.
Oh
my gosh! So how different was it being in DC?
It was quite different. So I obviously grew up on the West Coast. Then I went to school in the Midwest, and I spent some time in Texas and in Florida. But I'd never been, on the East Coast that far. I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't like the East Coast time zone. Everything is so late. I got kids. I got to get to bed, man. So other than that, honestly, it was pretty awesome. I love the fast lifestyle. I love having lots of people around. Obviously, we can't do that at this moment in time because we got to social distance. But typically, I enjoyed all that. I seriously enjoyed my time. I didn't realize how much of a country feel that Virginia had until I got here. I'm like, this has got a big country feel once you get outside of D.C. I thought that was cool, too.
Yeah, it's like when people hear the DMV and we think of Northern Virginia, that's kind of more your city-like. But outside of Northern Virginia, look, Virginia is still technically the South, and you have a lot of country parts. Even Ashburn, where it's more suburban feel. So it's different. But I'm glad you enjoyed your time here. Yes, we had the band, and I know you got used to hearing the fight song in D.C. Any favorite foods that you had while you were here, or anything that you took from D.C. that you took back to Nebraska now?
Oh, man. I'll be honest with you. I had tried so many foods before I got to D.C. It would be hard to surprise me with something new. There were some steakhouses that I really liked out there. Probably some of my favorite places I like to eat.
Oh my gosh, I love it. We're going to keep talking Redskins, but I do want to get more into your background. Again, Adam Carriker is joining me. He's so humbly doing it. I know. And also, Adam, I have to tell you, it was almost hard to welcome you on the show because, I'm an alum of the University of Maryland, right?
Oh, okay.
And we're going to have to talk Big Ten football, but I'll show love and I'll be nice to you.
There you go. I appreciate it.
But first, let's go into your background. So, you played in the National Football League, and of course, we just had the NFL draft, and probably one of the last fun live event things that we had, even though it was very different. But the 13th pick, 2007 draft, you got selected by the St. Louis Rams as a defensive end. Just take me back to that moment. What was it like for you hearing your name called?
I mean, it was so surreal. It wasn't really happening. The phone rings. I'm on and they're like, "Do you want to be a Ram?" And I'm like, "Yes, that would be great." But like, is this really happening? And then it was crazy. It was a whirlwind. So many people got on the phone because they wanted to congratulate, they wanted to welcome you. Then they need all this whole litany of information. And then literally, I think it was 2.5 hours later, I was on a plane. I never really even to this day got to celebrate it with my parents because I was at their house for the party. But it was so fast. It was a whirlwind. And still, even to this day, it kind of seems surreal that it even happened.
Wow. Okay. So when you see the players that had to do this virtual draft, right, for the first time in history, what was going through your mind? Do you think it was kind of the same still feel of what you got? Or do you hope, I don't know, that we can get them just something so it gets close to what you all had when you all got drafted?
So when I got drafted, they would only invite 5 or 6 guys to NFL, to New York, to the actual draft. And my agent mentioned they may or may not invite me. And I said, whether they do or not, I want to spend it with my parents. I want to have a party at my parents' house. Yeah. And so to me, it was almost kind of virtual for me. So even though they're used to like 20, 30, 40 guys being at the draft now, I think it almost was more kind of like what I went through now, being a little bit, more of a distance away. It is cool, though, for those guys who want to go up on stage and they want to hug the commissioner and they want to get the jersey and they want to get the picture in front of everybody. You want to hear the fan reaction, whether it's good or not so good. That is part of it. And hopefully we can get back to it, hopefully way before next year, but by the time next year's draft rolls around at the latest.
Yes, for sure. I mean, we just want to go back to it. We love those moments, like you said, hugging the commissioner and then the flashy suits and everything that we get at the draft. But I mean, I think it was different for this year's guys. But hey, we were all watching. I know the viewership numbers were up. And we really got to see, I think, those special moments in the house that we don't always get to see. So just curious, any favorite moments from this year's draft?
Oh, man, I think it's cool anytime somebody gets the call. Yeah. And everyone, my favorite moment, I forget who it was. The girlfriend was trying to look at the phone. He swatted it away. That was my favorite moment. CeeDee Lamb. Yeah. That's my favorite moment. But anytime the guy gets the call and then everyone around kind of figures out it's the call and they all erupt. That's always one of my favorite moments. But the CeeDee Lamb moment, that was pretty funny.
Hilarious. But like, he protected his girl after. He was like, hey, I was just trying to get the phone and I didn't know she was going to do that. But hey, at least we know his hands are still good. So hopefully he brings that down to the Dallas Cowboys. They'll be wanting to use that.
Like I said, a lot of people want to talk to you right after you get the call. So he was probably just trying to talk to everybody. So
Of course. Nothing ill-willed at all. Okay, so I'm going to take you back now before the draft. Talk about how you first started playing football and then what led you to play at the University of Nebraska.
So my dad was a big time Husker fan. He grew up in a small town farm boy in Gilbert, Nebraska. Easy for me to say. And so he grew up a Husker fan. So even though we lived in the state of Washington, every Saturday revolved around Nebraska football, and so did the following week, depending on if Nebraska won or lost. Yeah. And so that kind of rubbed off on me, and that's kind of how I got in to Nebraska. As far as playing football, from a young age, I wanted to play, but he wouldn't let me play. He was always nervous I'd get hurt. And so I didn't get to play until 7th grade. And oddly enough, I was a running back and I was a linebacker. So I was completely out of position. But then I played quarterback all the way through high school. And actually, I didn't play defensive end in an actual game until my senior year of high school. So I wasn't all that highly recruited as a defensive end. I had more offers as a quarterback. I was 6'6", 220. I could throw pretty well, but I like to hit people. So I said, I'm not going to be the guy that gets hit. I'm going to be the guy that hits people. Yes. So I took a little bit of a risk. And at Nebraska actually told me, you're not good enough to play here. And then a couple months later, they asked me to walk on, and with the out-of-state tuition, I mean, we just weren't going to be able to afford it. And then 2 nights later, they called with a scholarship. So that was always interesting to me. But that's kind of how I ended up in Nebraska.
Oh, my gosh. What a story to get there. And then now let's talk about your playing career at Nebraska. This is where you get to toot your own horn, Adam, and just talk about all of the highlights you had. You saw a fan talk about how great you were of a player at Nebraska. So kind of take me through, your playing career there.
Oh, man. So my welcome to college football moment. I'm sure you know who Joel Klatt is, kind of the voice of football on Fox. He was my first ever sack, against the Colorado Buffalo. So my first sack was Joel Klatt. And then my sophomore year, man, I had a really good spring and I was doing really, really well. And I ended up getting hurt. So I played the entire year banged up. And then my junior year was kind of when I broke out just a little bit. I think the first 4 games I had 4 sacks, and I'll never forget a column came out in one of the local newspapers. Now, my whole dream was to play in Nebraska. But NFL was never even on my radar. Okay, it was always Nebraska. And this guy wrote, and he's still there to this day, he wrote that I was thinking about leaving early after my junior year to go pro. And I was like,
wow.
I am? That's very interesting because that hadn't even occurred to me. So I finished the rest of my junior year. I do pretty well. And then I did actually have to make a decision. And I spoke with my dad, and I wanted to come back because that's what I'd always wanted to do was play at Nebraska. And then after my senior year, obviously you go to the draft, and we all kind of know what happened there. So that was kind of the whole process throughout Nebraska.
Wow. And then you are the dad to 6 little ones. I mean, yes. First off, before we even talk about, what we think they're going to do, how are you handling 6 little ones running around or inside of the house during quarantine, during a time like this and online learning? Like, what are you doing, Adam?
Yeah. So we got a 10-year-old who's our oldest and our only boy. So it's me and Jacob versus the world. Okay. And then he's got an 8-year-old sister, Addison. Trinity's 7. We have 2 4-year-old twins, Dakota and Desiree, then Jordan is 2. So we believe in spreading our kids out. Not at all. All right. So when we found out that we were going to be quarantined and school, you couldn't go to school anymore.
Right.
It wasn't a whole lot different other than the fact that we now obviously had to be the teachers at home, but we already had 3 kids at home all day long. Mm-hmm. And so for me, we had to get on top of the schoolwork and things of that nature. But having kids at home and having to be busy and, making sure that they're not getting into too much trouble wasn't something new. We just, we doubled the numbers, so to speak.
Any more in the future? You're going to add to the bunch, or is it too soon to go there?
No, we're done. So we always said 2 to 4. Okay. And we had 3. We had Trinity, who was our 3rd. Yeah. And we agreed to have 4. And we're at the doctor's. I still remember it clear as day. It was in January. Obviously about 4 or 5 years ago, and we're doing the ultrasound. And my wife says she saw it right away. Well, I didn't see it. And the doctor goes, do you want to know what they are?
Yeah.
They.
Right. You're like,
you're having twins. What? I walked out of there in a fog that day because we were supposed to have 2 to 4. That was too many, So, anyways, we have 5, and then we're debating whether to have 6. And honestly, it would always be kind of my wife that would bring up having the next kid.
Yeah.
And obviously, I'm excited to have every kid that I have, but she would always bring it up, and then she's like, "Well, I'm done." And I'm like, "Whoa, you can't shut it down now." So anyway,
we're just going.
Yeah, I'm like, so let's think about it. And then we got pregnant with Jordan, so that decision was made pretty quickly.
Oh my gosh! Well, I'm glad it's going well. Look, I've heard good stories. I've heard some horror stories, so I'm glad you're on that good mark. Wow. So one son, does he have any dreams or career aspirations to be like his dad and play football, or is he going another route?
So about 3 years ago, so he would have been 7. And I tend to spend all day on the weekends watching football, especially, if Nebraska's on TV, whatever the case may be. And he just stood there the first, I think it was Labor Day weekend. That's when college football always opened. He sat there and just watched next to me the whole weekend.
Oh my God.
And he has been all about football ever since. I'm like, Ange, to my wife, I'm like, I didn't brainwash him. She's like, no, this is totally his own thing. And so his dream is to play college football. His dream is to play at Nebraska. His second favorite team is Michigan. But that's kind of his dream. And he's kind of taken that on his own. And he likes baseball. He likes basketball. But he loves football. There would be days last fall. I let him play tackle football last fall going into the 4th grade. I was a little bit earlier than my dad was. Yeah. And he'd be having a bad day or a rough day or whatever. One of his sisters would be bothering him or something like that. We'd be on the way to practice and he'd realize where we're going. And all of a sudden he'd get really smiley and happy and chatty. Wow. And to me, that doesn't always happen with baseball and basketball. He likes it, but it's not going to take him from a bad mood to a good mood that quick. So to me, that was kind of the signal, like he really likes this. So that's kind of cool.
I love that. That's so awesome. And then just saying that he wants to be like his dad. And you talked about youth football. So I want to get into this because I feel like it's a hot topic right now. It sounds like you're a fan of starting youth younger in football. But of course, I know now people are kind of scared, right? We see the concussion numbers and we're just seeing more injuries. So overall, I mean, what is your kind of stance on that as a father and a former football player?
So I'll try to give you the condensed version because I was of the mindset I'd always give my kid a 1-year jump on what I had. So I started playing 7th grade, so I always thought 6th grade. Right. And as far as weightlifting, I started as a freshman in high school. I always thought I'd start him in 8th grade. And so my son's playing baseball. We're at a baseball tournament. The guy next to me, I had no idea. He's the president of this football league. And he starts talking to me and he asked me if I wanted to be the coach of their 9U team. And I said, well, I don't know what he heard, but what I said was, well, if nobody, you can't find anybody. Hit me up in like 2 months. My nice way of saying no. He heard yes, because the next day he goes, well, I talked to the board and we want you. I was like, I know what I said. What did you hear? So I talked to my wife. And honestly, I thought she'd shut it down right away. Because anytime I brought it up, she was just like, she just kind of looked at me sideways, wouldn't say anything.
Right.
And so I'm like, they want me to coach tackle football. Obviously, Jacob would play. And she's kind of sat there. And she goes, wow, sure. I was like, what? And what she did was brilliant, because if she says no, she shuts it down. If she says yes, I now have to make a decision. So it was brilliant. She put it on me. So anyways, I talked to a bunch of guys that I used to play with, guys in the NFL. And the guy who resonated with me the most was London Fletcher, because he started more games or more consecutive games in NFL history than any non-quarterback, non-kicker. And he's an undersized guy. All right, he's like 5'10". Okay, so he's not a big dude. So he's durable and tough and all those other things. And so he's like, hey, I started playing when I was younger. And he's like, you know, the thought process, the later you start, the less hits you accumulate over time, the safer it is. That makes sense. He goes, but what happens is if you start younger, and if you have to have a good coach. If you don't have a good coach, this doesn't work.
It won't matter, right?
They got to teach you the right technique. But if you learn how to hit, and you learn how to be hit, and you learn how to do things properly, it's actually safer long-term over time. And so for me, I thought back to my first 7th grade game. I was getting lit up. I was a running back, and I was getting lit up. And on defense, I was getting lit up because I didn't know what to do. I was standing straight up. I had my hands, you know. And so I was like, man, that makes a lot of sense. And then my daughter Addison wants to play volleyball. She's been very mad at us that she can't play volleyball, because around here you can't join playing volleyball until 4th grade, because the coordination is so tough to get the ball over the net and all that stuff. And I coach basketball as well, and you can go to normal basketball, full court press, zone defenses, all this stuff in 4th grade. And I started talking to people. I'm like, why 4th grade? And they're like, it's because that's when they start to be able to connect the dots mentally to physically, and they have that coordination. And well, Jacob's going into 4th grade. You know, maybe we should start him earlier. Maybe that coordination, it would actually be better. I tried to condense it, but that's how we ended up getting into 4th grade.
Look, you're a storyteller. And I love this, because I think as we talk about the concussion issue in the NFL, we talk about ways to make the game safer. It sounds like you're saying we can start this younger. We just need to make sure they learn the proper techniques so that it continues on. And anything else that you would say for how we can make just the game safer overall, so we don't have to hopefully keep having this concussion conversation and players retiring at a young age because they're scared of what could happen to their bodies.
Yeah, I think a lot of what you see is you don't see proper form tackling as much as you used to. What you see is I want a Sports Center top 10 highlight. You know? So you see these big attempts at collisions. And so what you see is more missed tackles, and you see more big hits. So if you actually learn the proper technique at a younger age, and as you get older, you know, you got to be careful with the contact throughout the season. It gets less and less, like in college and NFL, as the season goes along, for obvious reasons. But you got to maintain that to a certain degree, at least early on in the season, so you maintain properly how to do things. Because what happens is people get hurt when two things happens outside of just something flukish happening. They get hurt when they don't use the proper technique, or they're going slow because they're afraid of getting hurt. Okay. Because I mean, think about it. If you're going this fast and you hit something this fast, but all of a sudden you're going this fast and they hit you this fast, you're going to lose. So if you're going slow because you're unsure, you know, or you don't have the proper technique, those are the biggest issues.
No, and this is great. And again, you played the game, so I had to ask. I wanted to ask from the source how we make the game safer, and it's great to see that. I can't wait to talk about your son in the future and have him here on the show. I guess when I'm old and gray and he's in the prime of his playing career, it'll be a lot of fun. All right, so we talked about professional football, but I want to quickly go back to Nebraska football because, again, I understand you're a proud Nebraska alum. It's something that amazing you got to do. You got inducted into the Nebraska Football Hall of Fame. So we're talking about your moments. You got picked in the first round. You get now selected to the Nebraska Football Hall of Fame. What was that moment like for you?
So I will never forget. I didn't even know there was a Nebraska Football Hall of Fame for a long time. When I played, I would have never, ever done a show like I have. I avoided the media like the plague. Like, I've changed a lot. Okay. And so I wasn't even aware of a lot of things because all I wanted to do was lift, practice, play the game. But ever since I've retired, I've realized there's a whole nother world out there. And so when I first found out there was a Nebraska Football Hall of Fame, I'll never forget telling a friend of mine, oh, that'd be awesome if I got in, but it'll never happen. Like, I didn't think it would happen at all. I legit didn't. And then when I was told I was going in, like, my jaw hit the floor. And it was funny. He was the first person who texted me because he remembered that conversation from 2 years earlier. And so it was it was almost kind of like another surreal moment that I grew up watching this program, idolizing these players, these coaches, some of the things that they successfully did. And now here I was kind of being put in the same class as some of those guys. So I thought that was very cool.
Wow. And then just being inducted with the guys that came before you, right? You see this class that you're getting inducted into. I mean, what does that mean for you, for your legacy, when you think about it at the University of Nebraska?
I think it's very cool. Just like I grew up watching Trev Alberts or Grant Wistrom or Tommy Frazier and all these guys. And, those are three of the, probably the top 5 or 10 greatest to ever play at Nebraska. And to be just mentioned, in the Hall of Fame, same Hall of Fame breath as those guys, again, it's surreal. It still hasn't settled in that I have twins yet. I'm kind of one of these guys. It takes me a while to realize things. There's a Nebraska Hall of Fame. Oh, I'm gonna get it one day. So it's just kind of surreal.
I love it. I think well deserved. You gave us so many great highlights in college. And then as we transition to Nebraska now, we think about college sports now. Of course, it won't be the same, right? COVID-19 happened. We're trying to find ways to make the game safer. We're hearing about the Power 5 conferences, and we're hearing about, all the money that can be lost, up to $4 billion. We're hearing conferences that want to play, and some are saying, well, not so soon, not yet. I mean, our state's not lifting up restrictions. Let's talk college football. First off, I want to get your thoughts. What do you think is the best way that we can proceed to get sports back, but in a safe way?
Well, I know that they're going to start allowing football teams and basketball teams across the campuses on college, the entire country, to come back and start doing organized things on campus June 1st.
Right.
Now, I'm not expecting, the basketball team to all of a sudden do a 5-on-5 full court scrimmage or, the football team to be in pads, but incrementally and just try to be smart about it, start with small groups. Because I used to run in groups in Nebraska. There was anywhere from 20 to 30 guys. So let's say if there was 30, instead of doing a group of 30, maybe you do 3 different groups of 10, which is honestly kind of a pain. And it's going to be more of a time drain for the strength coaches. But I mean, they've been free for a while, I mean, you got time. It's part of the job. It is what it is. So smaller groups and space them out. And what's interesting is with my team that I coach, I mean, they're kids. But my assistant coaches hit me up and they're like, my kids are driving me nuts. We got to get them out of the house. Can we do some conditioning or something? And I said, I can't do it right now, but if you guys want to run it. So they've been running it. So what they do is they make sure every kid is 6 feet apart, and they do it in groups of 10. So there's groups of 10, 6 feet apart, and you got 20 yards in between you. And so I don't see why that couldn't work at college or the NFL level. And then gradually you can kind of get back to normal. Like, okay, maybe we're in a larger group now in a couple, 3 weeks, and maybe we're able to all get in a meeting room and watch film together for a little bit and just gradually do. You don't want to go all at once. First of all, nobody's going to like that, but it's also not smart, but gradually get back to normal and just see how things go.
Right. I think that's what we're doing, right? This has never happened before in human history to this level or extent. And we're all learning together. But I mean, we know how much college sports generate. We see, athletic departments asking for pay cuts and, it's just so many things happening in sports, right? But I think when we try to move forward in a safe way, I agree. I think there's ways to do it. But I think there's just still a lot of, honestly, just uncertainty, Adam. Like, we're thinking about, should some conferences play and some not? Is that fair? We look at the transfer portal. I mean, what do you think it's going to do for that if players are looking at, hey, I want to play ball. Like, I love my school, but I'm going to have to go somewhere else to, continue that on. So, I mean, what do you think is the best way that we can get to game playing, maybe in the regular college football season, that's fair to all players?
Man, that's a tough question because I look at the SEC, and so obviously warmer weather clients, COVID doesn't last as long, doesn't do as well. So warmer weather colleges and universities may have an advantage. At the same time, football, for example, you look at the SEC, it tends to be warmer weather clients. Football is king in the South. So I kind of anticipate the SEC to do everything they can to play football. Now you look at the Pac-12. They're one of they're like, there's not going to be students on campus in California that's at the state universities come the fall. So are they going to play without fans in the stands? Are they not going to have football? So you could possibly have a situation where the SEC is playing, the Pac-12 is not. You could even have, the Big Ten. Football is huge in the Big Ten, but that's cold weather. It's gonna be harder, and they expect there to be more issues when cold and flu season comes back around. So for me, the Big Ten's interesting. Because the Big Ten actually, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but they generate as much or more revenue than the SEC because of the more conferences, the larger markets. When Rutgers and Maryland came in, they brought the DC market, the New Jersey, New York market. So that brought a lot of money in. Then you got conferences like the ACC, which is an interesting conference to me because you could have half the universities who want to play. You could have half who don't, like the South, Miami, Florida State, Clemson, all those teams, they could be good to go, and then you look at the North, Boston College, Pittsburgh, Syracuse, they may not be ready to roll. So maybe half the conference wants to play, half doesn't. My attitude is this, and this is me as a competitor, and life isn't always fair. If you're able to play and you want to play, you should be able to play. And I understand that maybe that's not fair to the Pac-12 or Boston College versus Clemson, but it is what it is, and you got to try to figure out the schedules as best you can, because that's going to be a whole nother query and conundrum. Now, as far as the transfer portal, I fully expect if I'm going to Cal and Cal's not playing, and I look at Texas and Texas is, hey, I'm going to try to go somewhere that is. That just kind of is what it is. I know it's not fair, but as a competitor, I don't know. Life isn't always fair, You
have to do what's best, right? I mean, I think that's what we're going to see, and I think it's going to change the college landscape. But I think, like you said, I mean, I don't know. It's hard and it's tough, but I do think we are going to see some that are going to proceed on, because again, college sports is big money. It just is what it is, right? So we're going to see some games played. But then also saying on that, would you be a fan of them playing without fans in the stadium, or do you think it just kind of takes away from that whole college football experience?
So, all right. So I'm a pro wrestling fan. Okay. Yes. So mock me if you want, but here's the deal. WWE, the product hasn't been great for a few years, to be honest with you. And I've watched kind of out of loyalty and patience and waiting for it to get better again. Yeah. When they went to no fans in the stands, I'm sorry. I had a really hard time continuing to watch it. I really did. Yes. Now, when it comes to sports, if you don't have any other choice, you might have to do what you can do. The fans add so much. Electricity in a stadium is huge. Yeah. Even if they're cheering against you, it's still huge. For the people watching at home on TV, it adds to it. Like when I watch sometimes there's a neutral site game or a bowl game where not many people are at. It's not very exciting. But all of a sudden, I'm not a big fan of neutral site games because I like the home atmosphere. So as far as money, like I know, obviously football stadiums are a lot bigger than the Golden State Warriors, although they're an awesome team. I think they have a capacity of 17,000 people that can go to a Golden State Warriors game. On a typical home game night for the Golden State Warriors, they'll make $3 million. Now you times that by however more people are in a football stadium, that's a lot of money that they're missing as well. I do know the big money is in the TV revenue. Right. So when you pass on the TV revenue, that's where the big money is. So I think they're going to do anything and everything they can to try to find a way to have football.
I mean, I agree, right? We need football. We want football. We yearn football. I mean, people plan, holidays, vacations, sometimes around these football games. I mean, that's how big they are. You think about the tailgates and everything. So I understand if we have to go without the fans, but I mean, this is all I'm hearing players say, like, hey, we want the fans. We play for the fans, like you said, whether they're rooting for you or against you. So only time will tell. And just think about that in the professional ranks. I mean, could you even have imagined just thinking about a game without fans? You talked about how passionate they are here in DC. I mean, take away all those Redskins fans, take away that band. Is it the same game?
It's crazy. It's I legit feel like we're living in a movie. Okay, like we are living in a movie and we're watching it play out. Only it's taken a whole heck of a lot longer than 2 hours. So. It's interesting because I heard they might try to push it up to the summer to play the season. Obviously, it's a little bit late for that just because of the warmer weather. They could try to push it back to the spring for reasons because maybe we can figure out stuff by then. We can flatten the curve even more, maybe warmer weather. I don't know. Or they can shorten the fall season. They're going to try to figure out something. For me, obviously, I actually think I heard someone propose, and I apologize, I forget who it was, but they proposed maybe pushing it back a couple months. And for college football specifically, because you got that long layoff for the bowls. Okay. You've basically got about 5 or 6 weeks where you're practicing, but there's no game. So if you moved it back 5 or 6 weeks, you could play the same amount of games in the same amount of time. And instead of having so much layoff in between the regular season finale and the bowl games, you could just have 2 weeks and maybe another month could make a difference. Maybe not. I don't know. But that is a possible scenario to get fans in the stands and play a whole season potentially.
I like it. And like you said, it makes sense. It makes sense. I think that's what we're all just trying to do. We're just trying to make sense of it. But then I think also when we think about college football, I think some of the sports too we're not thinking about though that kind of are also just hurting from this. We see colleges kind of cutting these smaller sports, right? And it's sad. Like I think to be a college athlete now, it's just completely different, a completely different mindset. But again, I'm for the fans being there. Like you said, I've heard also that, maybe pushing the season back is an option. But again, it's going to be different. I think we all just have to realize that. I know it's tough. I understand how much we love football, but we're all learning together. And I also think we have to think about the athletes when we're thinking about this. We can't only think about our fandom, but think about the people who are actually putting themselves on their coaches and the coaching staff and everybody else that this will affect. Any last thoughts on college football or any ideas of how we can get back to playing in a safe way?
I think we kind of talked about it, doing it slowly, seeing how it unfolds, seeing how it progresses. If pushing it back farther allows us to have a full season, allows the Pac-12 or the Mountain West or the California State universities to join in, I got no problem with that. I'm not trying to exclude anybody. Life isn't fair, but let's try to do the best we can. And, if we get up against a wall and we got to make a decision to play or not play with everybody based on the info we have, then I say we play as much as we can. Just taking it one step at a time, being patient, understanding that obviously safety is the priority, but we do kind of got to start to get back to normalcy in life and just see how things progress. I think some people are just kind of like retreating and nobody touch me, which was appropriate, for a while, obviously. And I think some people are like, screw this. I'm going to go hug and kiss everybody. Like there's got to be a happy medium in there. You know what I mean?
Yes, we've got to find it. We can do this, people. I know sometimes it seems tough, but we have to get there. All right, Adam, we're in DC, so the Redskins fans are asking me questions. Nobody wants to talk about the Rams. We were going to talk about the Rams.
That's okay.
So we got a question from the fans. What are your thoughts on the Washington Redskins defense? So, I guess we can talk about how they've been building it up. Look at that defensive front now. We think about Chase Young being added and just the excitement that he brought. Overall, how do you think the Redskins defense will fare this season?
They got multiple first-round picks on that D-line alone. You got Ryan Carriker, who's been there for a while as well. They have a lot of talent and ability to dominate up front. All right, and starting right now, like on the defensive side of the ball, they should be tough to move in the run game. They should be getting after the quarterback in the pass game. They've spent a lot of first-round picks. They got a lot of talent up front on that defensive line. And honestly, I can't wait to kind of watch it. And Chase Young, when you watch him, he's rare, and I'm not breaking any news when I say that, but he's rare in the fact that a lot of guys tend to be much better in the pass game, much better in the run game, not so good in the other. And he obviously is known for his pass rushing ability, but when you watch him against the run, he certainly doesn't have a lot of weaknesses there either. He brings a well-rounded 3-down player type of game to the Redskins, and that's hard to find. And, when I heard it was smoke screens, I think everyone pretty much knew it. Where they were talking about, the Redskins might trade back or they might want Tua. I was like, no, they don't. They want Chase. All right, they're going to take Chase. This is crazy.
I think if Tua had came, there would have been, yes, there would have been some happy fans, but no, we needed Chase and very excited, of course, for Tua. But, Redskins defense now, we're talking about it, and I think some are putting them up in the NFC East. Where do you think they'll finish this year?
So I think the Redskins have a legit chance to be much, much better this year. I really do. I'm not just saying that, trying to be a homer or be nice. The Giants are always kind of a little bit of a conundrum out there. Sometimes you don't expect them to be good, then they are, then they're supposed to be, and then they're not so much. Yeah. I think the Cowboys offense versus the Redskins defense, that's going to be twice a year. Those are going to be two of the matchups I want to see. I'm going to tune in. And the Redskins are still my team, by the way. I know that was mentioned earlier. They are still my team. Obviously, I played for the Rams, but they moved to L.A. Everybody's different. Even the equipment manager is different. I don't know anybody. There's literally one person that's the same in the organization. The owner's gone, everybody. So anyways, the Redskins are my team. And I look at the Cowboys, I look at the Redskins, and the Eagles, man, the past couple of years, I would have said they were probably the most talented team. But they've just kind of struggled, and they haven't been able to put it all together. So I'm excited to watch the Cowboys offense, the Redskins defense, CD Lamb. All right, you got Chase Young. And I'm curious to see if the Eagles can start putting things together because they got the talent, ability, and it is Carson Wentz's team. Let's see what happens. Well, I know Jalen Hurts was drafted.
I was about to ask you about that.
I know he was drafted.
Your thoughts on that?
I think Jalen – I think he's kind of like, Nick Foles became too expensive, okay, to keep him around. And Wentz is a great player, former MVP, but he does tend to get nicked up a little bit. And so you needed a good, solid backup quarterback. And I'm not saying Jalen can't come in and earn the job because obviously he's been in quarterback battles before. But I think it's Wentz's team, and Jalen is a little bit of a, I don't know, I don't have a better way to put it, but a security blanket, so to speak, for them just a little bit. So if they can start to put it together, it could be interesting. And I'm not trying to disregard the Giants, but between the Redskins, if they can start to get things going on offense a little bit, the Cowboys, if they can figure out a defense a little bit, and the
Yeah.
Eagles can put it all together. It could be an interesting race between those three teams.
I think the division just got so much better and so much more fun. We're going to be in for good football. But then also, let's go to the Rams. Another different Rams team than you were used to. But how do you think they'll fare this football season?
Yeah, they're very talented, and they got a lot of ability. And I know some of those guys have gone elsewhere. And Ndamukong Suh is now with the Bucs and things of that nature. He's only with them for a year, but they still got Aaron Donald. All right, they still got a lot of speed on offense. Todd Gurley did go. But, their head coach, he was with me at the Redskins. All right. So I got to know him a little bit. So he's a sharp, young, bright mind. I think he had some early success, and not the past couple of years, they haven't been decent, but I think he's had a bit of a learning curve. But he is so sharp, so bright. I mean, he's going to get back to the Super Bowl one day, and I think he's going to do very, very well. But the Rams, they have so much explosive ability on offense and the ability to get after the passer on defense. And to me, if you can get after the passer on defense and you can run the ball on offense, that's where you can have a lot of success.
Yeah, and we talk about success. One team that everyone's saying it's going to be successful, we got to go to Tampa Bay Buccaneers, because now they've got the GOAT. They've got Brady. We're talking about Gronk coming back in the shape he'll be in. Do you think we're writing them off just way too soon to be this spectacular team? Or do you think, the hype is real with them?
It's interesting because they kind of, and this is going to be weird because obviously Brady has been in 9 Super Bowls. He's won 6. Gronk's won multiple Super Bowls. Yeah. One of the best tight ends ever, in the conversation for the greatest, if you wanted to put him in that conversation. And I thought of the Browns because you think of all, and obviously the Browns haven't been quite the same success level wise consistency over time, but the Browns had a lot of talent going into last year. It didn't really come into fruition.
Right.
The Bucs have a lot of talent, and they got a lot of big names. And I think it's going to be interesting because I do think it takes a little bit of time for everything to gel. Right. I mean, Brady had been with Belichick for 20 years. That's a lot of gelling right there. Yeah. So can he get on the same page, with his offensive coordinator, with the play caller? And can he start to do some of the things that he used to do in New England with completely different people than he was used to in New England? Obviously, other than Gronkowski, who's going to be coming back. So for me, I do think obviously they're going to be much better. I expect to see them in the playoffs. The question is, when you face an elite team, when you face a top team, you don't have that cohesiveness that they've had for years. Like if they face the Saints, Drew Brees and Peyton, and what they've got going on, that could be interesting. So I think they'll make the playoffs. I do think what's going to be fun to watch, because you watch the Last Dance with Michael Jordan. Everything under God's hot sun motivated him. If you colored on his piece of paper in kindergarten, he was going to kick your butt in the NBA floor. All right. I think Tom Brady, and I don't know his relationship with Bill Belichick, but I guarantee anytime you go somewhere else, there's a little bit of, I want to show you. I want to shove it up your rear end just a little bit. Not that I don't love you as a person, but in a competitive sense, I want to prove you wrong. You should have kept it. So I think Gronk and I think Brady may have that, and that could be interesting and fun to watch.
It's going to be fun to watch. And something that is not so fun to watch, though, right now, this whole Dak Prescott contract situation. All right. We're talking about the Cowboys. Sorry, Redskins fans watching this show. But how do we find a happy medium for Dak and Dallas Cowboys? I mean, what would you like to see happen?
I think that's going to be hard. I think it's going to be hard because Dak's a really, really good player. And they've had wins and they've had success. All right. And I got a lot of respect for Dak. If you stack up, and it's all kind of speculative as far as the actual numbers that he's looking for, if you stack up what's been reported versus other guys who make that kind of money and you start to compare the stats a little bit, the stats don't exactly match up 100%. Okay. So for me, also, when you start to look at the fact that quarterbacks who make so much money, it only allows you so much other money to put elsewhere on the rest of the team. Those teams actually have less success. A lot of the rookie quarterbacks who've come out and done really well, Jared Goff on that rookie contract, when you can put talent around them, that's why those teams do better. So it's a bit of a, hey, the team's got to be able to produce as a whole around you as well. We got to be able to take care of you fairly as well because you have played well. But you got to have that comparison of, hey, that's what this guy makes. This is what he's done statistically with what he's done on the field versus what you've done. So this is weird, but I actually side a little bit more with Dak may have to take a little bit less money than he would like. It'd be better for the team, though, and maybe in the end, better for him wins and losses wise, too.
True. And like, hey, we all know what you want at the end of the day. You want to get to that Super Bowl.
Yes.
I think he is going to have to take less. But look, I get it. Your agent should be fighting for you, and you should want the most when you know you're talented.
Yeah,
but,
absolutely.
Hopefully this will soon find an ending point. And you talked about Last Dance. I want to talk about that with you. But really quick, I want to ask your opinion on this question. If you had to pick one player in the NFL now that most resembled your game and your playing style, who would you say and why?
Oh, man, that's a good question. I don't know who's really ridiculously good looking. No, I'm just kidding. You know, I always tried to be, and I look back and there's always things you could have done better. And I'm like, man, I could have done this and I could have done that. You know, always as a competitor, you always feel like you could have done things better.
Right.
You know, for me, I always tried to be physical. I never wanted to be that guy that got out physical. I always wanted to be physical and able to get after the quarterback a little bit too. So, oh man, to find a specific player that comes to my mind is a little bit tough.
I know I put you on the spot.
No, that's okay. You know, I look at it. How about this? I'll put it this way. I'm a poor man's JJ Watt. How about that? I'm a poor man's JJ Watt. Is that okay?
I will take that. That's a good one. That's a really good one. I had to get your thoughts and opinions on that. All right. You talked about Last Dance earlier. You touched on it, but MJ, I think we learned just so much. And I'll tell you, Adam, I'm a 90s baby. So kind of getting to relive that now as an adult and just see like what went into his mindset and what made him so great. But any favorite moments or anything interesting that you learned from the documentary?
Oh, I thought just a lot of the inside stuff. One of my favorite moments is him talking about trash talk, holding the bat and the cigar.
Oh my gosh, in the locker room, yes.
Oh man, that was awesome. You know, to me, I always try to tell people that there's a lot of talented people in this world. Like there's a give or take 7 billion people walking the face of God's green earth. But if you just look at the NFL, and obviously there's other pro sports, but there's about 1,600 players on any given Sunday that play. That is a very, very small percentage that make it from 7 billion people. And obviously not everyone's trying to play football, but you get my point. There's a lot of talented people walking the streets. And Michael Jordan was uber talented. But I would doubt if he's the most talented person in history, yet he's known as the greatest of all time. To me, it's because of the 6 inches between his ears. He wanted the ball. He didn't feel nervous. He pushed others. Not everyone always liked it. But his mental approach, he was a mental assassin. All right, that's what he was. And to me, that's what pushed him from being great to being the greatest of all time. It was because of his mental mindset. And, you know, I'll be honest with you, I tend to get motivated easily, shall we say. I kind of like him. Like, I'm that kid. I'm that guy that if you colored on my paper the wrong way in kindergarten, I'm going to remember it when we're in college or the NFL playing against each other. You know, as a retired person, you got to learn to let those things go because I don't really have an outlet anymore other than just going to the gym and walking around like a monster with my headphones on. But that's about all I got now. But to me, that was the thing. Like, you could see he was always motivated. But when somebody would do something, that's when he dropped 55. Or that's when he would, like Reggie Miller talked about when they played in the late 80s, early 90s. You know, he said, oh, you're supposed to be Michael Jordan and you're the guy who walks on water or whatever. And then he holds Reggie to 2 points the rest of the game and Michael goes off. You know, that motivation is probably what put him over the top.
And it's amazing just to see, like you said, I mean, anything, he would hold it against you. And then next thing you know, lights out for you. And you were on the wrong side of Michael Jordan. And I mean, do you think we've ever, I mean, the documentary gave us an insight into his mind, but do you think we've ever seen an athlete like him that just had that mindset to just, you know, bring it to you because he wanted to be the greatest. He wanted to be the best. And he was going to basically show you why you're wrong about him.
You know, the only other guy that pops into my mind immediately is actually Tom Brady. Now, my mom does not like Tom Brady. Okay. And I'll be like, Mom,
why don't you like Tom Brady?
Why don't you like Tom Brady? She doesn't bring up Spygate. She doesn't bring up she doesn't bring up those things. She goes, I can't stand how he acts on the sideline. I'm like, well, what's he doing on the sideline? He's yelling and screaming all the time. I'm like, oh, so he's still motivated after 20 years, 9 Super Bowls, 6 Super Bowl wins, and he's still motivated to play. I don't see what's wrong with this. Because at a certain point, you kind of reach, well, I've been there, I've done that. But Michael Jordan, Tom Brady, like Tom Brady's probably motivated to prove Bill Belichick wrong. Like they find ways to motivate themselves. So the only other guy that I could think of off the top of my head was Tom Brady.
I think that's a good comparison. I think many would agree with you. I don't know if you saw, but Paul Pierce got some slack, or really some flack, because he listed his top 5 basketball players. And it sounds like you're saying MJ is the GOAT, but he left LeBron off his top list. I mean, do you have, if you had your like top 5 basketball players, take me through them. Who would you put greatest of all time?
So I'd probably have Jordan at 1. And I think by the time, well, you know, hopefully LeBron's able to play the rest of some sort of the rest of the season, get a few more years in. I mean, Jordan won 3 titles about the same age that LeBron is right now. Okay. So I think sometimes people forget that. But to me, it'd be Jordan. All right. And then 2 through 5, you could kind of mix up a little bit. All right. Bill Russell somehow gets lost in all this. People want to talk about Jordan had 6. Well, he's got 11 championships. Not the championships is the barometer of everything, which is why Jordan's won. You know, you got Bill Russell. I'd put Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in there, Magic Johnson, and I would put LeBron. Okay. I would probably, because I saw a list where LeBron was ahead of Magic, and Jalen Rose actually went off like, when did LeBron pass Magic?
He's like, wait.
Magic has 5 rings. He has 3. LeBron's been to 9 finals. Magic has been to 9. He went to 6 and 8 years. And not that that's all the measurements of because obviously you got to do some things individual. It's not all team oriented, but you look at Magic. He could play point guard. He could play the forward. He played center. Or had a triple-double that game. He could play all the positions. That's something LeBron can do. I don't know if he's ever played center, but he probably could. And so you look at the versatility, you look at a lot of things they've done. To me, I would probably put Magic ahead of him right now, but I do think LeBron could pass him at some point.
All right. I love it. I also have MJ as my GOAT. So, look, case closed. That's a good list.
I mean, when he was gone, they went to the Eastern Conference semifinals and lost. Before he came back that second year, they were under 500. All of a sudden, he comes back, they go 72-10. I mean, what's the difference? I know Horace Grant was gone that second year, and they brought in Rodman. Okay, but he was the difference, plain and simple.
Right. I mean, it showed it. It showed it. I'm so glad he dropped the doc when he did. All right. I want to talk about your shows that you have. I think they're amazing. But really quick, we have 2 more quick questions from you. The people love you, Adam.
Oh, awesome.
Which is a great thing. So first, we're going back to college football. They're saying if the colleges will be closed, why do you think the sports events wouldn't be too? I feel like this is kind of a question that some are saying, like, is it unfair to kind of give the athletes this treatment, or is it unsafe to give them this treatment and you're not giving that to normal students? Your thoughts on that?
So, like I said, life isn't always fair. And
you did say that,
college sports is big money, as we've talked about. Even if you don't have fans in the stands, you got the TV revenue, which is where they make most of their money. I mean, if you go to a big bowl game, and obviously part of that is fans being in the stands oriented, but you're going to make about $12 to $13 million if you go to one of the New Year's 6 bowl games. So that's a lot of money just for a bowl game. So you can imagine what they make the rest of the year.
Right.
It's apples to oranges a little bit, simply because these kids are going to make money. Also, if you're going to let all students back, that's thousands of people. If you're going to let student athletes back, that's hundreds. Okay. It's a little bit easier to manage. It's a little bit smaller crowd, if you will. So it's easier to keep people separated. It's easier to have I say physical distancing, because social distancing, I don't know, it sounds unfriendly to me, but you can be physically distant, if you will. And also you can still put that product out on the court, the field, the diamond, whatever the case may be. And hopefully people can at least watch it on TV, if not watch it in the stands. Is it completely fair? I think it is a little unfair, but I do think it is fair because it's a little bit different, because of the lesser numbers, because of the revenue that's going to be brought in, which affects the unity, which then indirectly affects those students as well. So to me, that's kind of how I look at that.
No, it's great. Look, it's a great answer. And we got one more for you. I knew another Redskins question was going to come. But I want to know your prediction for the Redskins this year. Where do you see them finishing?
You know, I think they're going to be on that bubble as a playoff team. I really think they can be like entering week 15, 16, 17. Like, hey, if we win 2 out of the next 3 or 3 out of the next 4 or 2 of the next 4, we could be getting into the playoffs, the wild card discussion. The NFC East has been so wide open the past few years. There hasn't been a dominant team out of the NFC East for a couple of years. And I know a few years ago, the Eagles, you know, when they won the Super Bowl, they were pretty darn good. But outside of that, it's always kind of a wild card in this division. So to me, it could come down to those last couple of weekends. So they could end up 9-7, 10-6, right on that bubble.
Wow. So you just became everybody in DC's most favorite person. So I have to give you those props. I
love that defensive front. If that can start to register with the rest of the team, it could be huge.
And are you a fan of Dwayne Haskins starting at that quarterback position?
People are funny, man, because when he was drafted, everyone was like, "Oh, the Giants are idiots for not taking him and taking someone else." And now people are like, "Well, is he the guy?" You know, it's funny how things can change in a year. And there's been some interesting reports, but if you look at what he did in college, and it was only 1 year as a starter, you always like to see a couple years, but in the 1 year he started, I mean, he could have easily won the Heisman Trophy that year. And I know he went to New York. He was there with Tua, and he was there with the eventual winner as well. So to me, he's got that talent. He's got the ability. He's got the size. He's got the big arm. To me, it's if he can get everything down and he can start to read defenses quickly and things of that nature, I think he's got the ability to do it.
Yeah, I think, look, give him a chance. Give him a chance. And I think this season, I think he's been really putting in the work. So I think it's going to be a new look, new team. Ron Rivera's at the helm. I think, big things are in store for the Washington Redskins. And I don't know if all Redskins fans know this, Adam, but I thought something that was amazing that you did. You helped a young boy, I think his name was Carson, who had been bullied. And so for fans that don't know that, kind of talk about that story and why was it so important for you and your wife and your family, to help this young Washington Redskins fan?
Yeah, so basically Carson he's a big Redskins fan, but he goes to a school where there's not a lot of Redskins fans, right? He doesn't live in the DC area.
Right.
And so he wore his Redskins jersey to school, and basically he got made fun of. And then he had a birthday party not long after, and it carried over into the birthday party, and it just never seemed to be going away. And so the dad actually knew someone that played at Nebraska who knew me. And so this person reached out to me, connected me to the dad. And so basically we just ended up, I sent him a couple things that were signed, and then the Redskins heard about it. Yeah. And Dan Snyder, he just sent him a whole bunch of stuff, like a whole boxes full of stuff. And it was awesome. And I thought the coolest thing, other than you could seriously, like when I talked to Carson, you could seriously hear I'm not alone. Because I think that's one of the worst things when you're getting bullied. You feel like it's everybody. It's 7 billion people versus you. Whether it is or not, that's how it feels. And all of a sudden, he felt like he had a posse behind him. And I think that was really cool. The other cool thing was Dan Snyder didn't have to do that, and he didn't publicize it at all. I know people who will do public events and show up and do nice things when the cameras are there, and when they're gone, they won't. So I thought that was really cool on his part.
That's amazing. And so when you tell your kids that story, what do you want them to take most from that and what you did?
Well, a couple of things. Number one, you're never alone. You're no matter how dire it might seem or how tough it might seem, you're never alone. Right. Number two, if you see someone who's struggling, I'll never forget an exercise we did as a rookie, as a rookie. They had someone come speak to the team, and we're all in the team meeting room with the Rams, and she was a psychologist, and she said, stand up and shake the person's hand next to you and give them the worst hello and the worst handshake, like you couldn't care if they exist, and do it now. And so you turn up, you're like, hello, and even though you knew they were going to do it, you felt terrible.
Right.
Like, you jerk, why are you doing that? And now it's like, now look at them, make eye contact, be genuine, say hi, how you doing? And even though you knew it was staged because she told us to do it, you felt completely different. Wow. So for my kids, it's like, hey, just go over, just let them know that someone cares, that someone's there. Just say hi, how you doing? Something as simple as that. And obviously you can do more, but something as simple as that, it's amazing the positive effect you can have.
It makes a difference. Thank you so much for sharing that story. And then before I let you go, you have these amazing shows. I see the background that you have there. Great publicity. So talk about these shows and how can people watch and tune into all the great stuff that you're doing?
Yeah, so I got the Carriker Chronicles behind me. We call it the People's Show. Obviously, I stole that from The Rock because he was the People's Champ. So I'll just put that out there. But it is 95% Husker football. If you're interested, you can check it out. I post it on Facebook and Twitter every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, or omaha.com/Carriker. And then on Sunday nights throughout the season, I wanted to go live. I wanted to do what you're doing. I wanted to go live. They're pre-recorded, which is nice because I can record them when I want. They basically just go out the next day. Right. They can add pretty nice little effects to it. But I want to do live. I want to interact with the fans. So I started 2 years ago on Sunday nights after Husker games at 8 p.m. Central Time on Facebook. I go live and I interact directly with the fans. And people really seem to enjoy it. So it's actually, it's interesting because they're connected. Carriker Live, Carriker Chronicles, but they're actually separate because Carriker Chronicles is with the company. Carriker Live is completely just me. So it's kind of grown into their own two separate businesses. But basically, I love interacting with fans directly and going live. I love the unpredictability.
Yes, it makes it fun. Anything can happen, right? You guys and the fans get to see it. And before I let you go, again, I went to Maryland. Maryland football is kind of being talked about. We gained Tua's little brother. Yeah. How do you think Maryland football is going to fare this football season?
Yeah, I remember last year, after 2 weeks, man, you guys lit it up. You were
we were doing something, yes.
I still remember. Was it 2001? You guys went to the Orange Bowl, played Florida. I think.
Me back. Yeah, look at
So I love football in general, NFL and college football in general. So I can tell you who played in the '96 Rose Bowl. By the way, it was Ohio State, Arizona State. I love this type of stuff. Yeah. So I've always rooted for Maryland. I remember their basketball program in the early to mid 2000s was dominant. The title, I think 2005. I could be wrong on that year. And so I've always enjoyed watching Maryland. Yeah. I never really hear turtles in real life referred to as terrapins, but I do enjoy that though. So that's always cool.
We are one of a kind. Well, look, Maryland football always said we have good players, but our quarterbacks are always getting hurt, and we just get some bad luck. But you know what? We do beat Texas, so that's one of our pride things that we will hold on to. Adam, it was such a joy having you. Hope to have you back, and thanks again so much for your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thank you.
Thanks again so much. Have a great one.
Thank you. You too.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining this live stream edition of Listen In with KNN. Again, Adam Carriker joined the show. We brought in Nebraska. We talked to everything, and it was just a lot of fun. All right, tune in this Saturday at 2 p.m. as I'm going to have John Beckham and Pitty Green. They're going to join me. We're going to talk all things PG County basketball and Kevin Durant's documentary, which came out on Showtime, In the Water. You will not want to miss it. And then next week, be sure to join me because I'll be joined by Meadow World Peace and Jim Rooney. So lots of great shows coming up. Make sure you subscribe to the show. Please comment during the show to get your questions answered. And I truly do appreciate your time. Again, this is Listen In with KNN. This is the live stream edition. We drop live every Thursday at 6 p.m. and Saturdays at 2 p.m. And then the audio version drops every Tuesday on Spotify, Google Play, and iTunes. So you should not have a reason to not be listening in with me. Again, thank you so much for joining me. I truly appreciate each and every one of you all for joining the show. And again, I'll see you hopefully here Saturday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. 2 p.m. Eastern Time. All right. Have a great one. Bye, guys.
Follow Kelsey on social media at @TheRealKNelson. And catch each broadcast of Listen In with KNN on air at AM 1340 and 96.9 FM Fox Sports Radio on YouTube, on Facebook and Twitter, and online at KelseyNicoleNelson.com. Thank you for watching this special live stream broadcast of Listen In with KNN.